I'm Paul, Minnesota, so not too far from Iowa. But yeah, for me, I'm a certified exercise physiologist. I'm passionate about exercise, being healthy, all that type of stuff. But yeah, I got some stuff coming soon too.
Cool,
That's it.
cool. We got Jordan next. You're next to Ryan on my screen.
Okay, I'm good now. All right, there we go. I'm Jordan. I'm out of Kansas City, and I'm a teacher. And yeah,
Food.
We see I got
Yeah,
Jackie and Donnie down there.
yeah. My name's Donnie, from Des Moines, Iowa too. That's about it.
Cool.
And I'm Jackie Guerrero. I'm a legal assistant at a law firm here downtown. I have been talking to Joseph for a while now. We've been having some good dialogue about, trying to hold more podcasts like this, just getting people involved, having discussions about topics that everybody's passionate about. Not only that, something where people can get more insight on others' perspectives, on others' ideas, in a way to kind of bring people a little closer together. So I'm kind of excited see what this night brings.
Cool. We have looks like Damien next. See, you might have uh, your mic is muted if you're trying to talk. I think I see you in the chat too. We can go to Kelly.
Yeah, sure. My name is Kelly Spong. I grew up in the DC Metro or the DMV. Um, and I made it through both 9/11 and the DC Sniper. Those would have been my formative years growing up. And I work at Brown Winnick Law with Jackie, and I'm happy to be here. Lucky to get in with such a group.
Cool, cool. Thanks for sharing, guys. Appreciate you. It looks like okay, so Damien's mic isn't working, but he'll still be here. Can you guys see anything in the chat? Like if I post something, let me see.
it pops up in the corner.
Okay, cool, cool. Sweet. All right. Let's just jump right in. I'm excited to hear from y'all. I don't really
Can
want to do
Can
too
I
much
say
talking.
something really quick?
Oh
Sorry, Joe.
yeah. Of
I
course. Yeah,
apologize
you
for
get
interrupting.
yeah, no,
No,
you're
I
fine.
thought it was funny. You made that statement. You said you don't duck any smoke or whatever. I feel that, but for me, honestly, I'm like I don't duck smoke either. So I mean, I wish the two people on here had their cameras on. That would be nice. I like to, let's just get real. This is dialogue. I want you
Hey,
guys
I was
to
told this was a podcast,
Oh yeah,
like a
video.
radio.
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's
no.
okay.
No, that's
It's
okay.
fine.
Yeah,
I'm just being
Next
real.
time, next time.
yeah,
It's
for
okay.
sure, for
I
sure. No,
understand.
I do. So we'll do video and I do like audio and stuff, like in the Twitter Spaces and things like that. So, but yeah, for sure. So this is something that I think is major. This is big, right? So I know we can probably go all around the mulberry bush, and I'm for that. Um, I don't want to start, even though if you guys actually want me to, I will. But I think that's a cop out. Is there anyone who would like to kind of jump into? I guess if maybe this isn't the right question, this is just the first question that came to mind. Maybe a better question is what is morality? Maybe that's a better question versus like who defines it. So definitely open to your guys' feedback on that. So and anyone you could just
I I
jump
can
in. Or
say,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So who defines morality? I think it's pretty much what you truly believe in. I would say so. Um, and that would probably be if you believe in God or whatever it may be. I think that kind of helps define your morality, and then what you truly feel inside your heart. That instinct within you. You're like, is this moral? Is this right? Do I feel like it's tearing me up inside, where I don't want to do something? I don't want to do it. It's like,
Mhm.
or you're doing something out of the kindness of your heart and it feels good. It makes you feel like, man, I'm helping someone. So it's like, it's those two feelings. How do you want to feel? Do you want to feel this, this burning deep inside, feeling that you have when you know you did something wrong, or when you feel happy because you helped someone or made someone else feel happy? But that's pretty much it.
Yeah. You guys feel free to jump in. Any thoughts on what Ryan said, or you can just share kind of how you view this.
I feel like morality could be like,
So I think
as far as like it depends on what the person is used to. A person could think that stealing is a good thing because that's what they know, that's what they've seen their parents do, that's what
Yeah.
they've seen people around them do. So they don't know any better, so they think that that's the right thing to do. So it is about who it's coming from. Everybody's definition can be different on morality. People like some people don't. I know right from wrong. I was raised different. I know right from wrong. So I know good from evil. Some people don't. Some people just they just do what they see, and it's not their fault. It's society's. I kind of blame it on society and those around them. But there is something that should click in your mind that tells you what's good and bad. As far as like just like doing good and doing bad. As far as like I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say. Like
I think another good question though is, for example, like you say, who kind of defines morality?
Right.
Who like he says, there's people who grow up, being taught, being disciplined, basically, people who have caring and loving parents, and then there's those who don't have that love and support and have to kind of figure it out themselves or figure it out because of what type of environment and what type of society they actually grow up in. So at the end of the day, is it up to the individual? Do we actually make the decision of what we think is right and wrong, or is it something that is created within us by our environment?
Mm.
all right.
Yeah. Was you gonna say something, Jordan or Kelly?
Oh yeah, my bad.
No, you're good. You're good.
I definitely think that person defines with their own morality.
I don't know. I think you're still cutting out, Jordan.
I might have to go downstairs. Am I good?
For like a second.
Oh, okay, I might take it downstairs, but so I might be traveling. But I think it's definitely just based on the person. Just because I think as a society, I think there's things that we agree on, like, all right, yeah, killing, things like that. That's not it. You know what I'm saying? But I think that when you're talking about just as in a general perspective, it's definitely on the person. Because when I was in class, when I was with my students, we were talking about something similar, and we got to talking, and I brought up the movie John Q. And in John Q, I mean, of course, we can all sit back and look and be like, man, hold on, he held everybody hostage. You know what I'm saying? But it was to get his son a heart. So,
Right.
I asked him, I was like, is he a villain? You know what I'm saying? Is he bad because he wanted his son to live? You know what I'm saying? When they weren't going to treat his son like his son's a little kid, his son deserved to die. Now, granted, yes, I mean, he held everybody hostage at gunpoint, this, that, and the other. And, he ended up going to jail for that. But it's like, when you talk about morality in his particular situation, he thought that was the only and right thing to do for his son. Now he may not have believed that it was right to do, but for his son to live, he did believe that. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's just perspective. It comes from the person.
Yeah.
Kelly, any thoughts?
Oh, absolutely.
She said absolutely.
I think, I'm listening and I'm thinking, like, I work with the Boy Scouts. I'm a regular volunteer with them, and, do good, do your best.
Mhm.
And I think like morality should be stemmed from like just doing what ought to be done, whether you personally benefit from it or not. I'm not sure that's always how it pans out. And kind of circling back, Jackie was talking about, you know, doing the right thing. And I was thinking about like legally, like look back at our laws and, you know, we have such a dependability on them. And yet they have failed us time and again in this morality question. And yet people are convicted of crimes of which they did not commit. You know, the people who are supposed to be protecting us are supposed to have some sort of moral obligation, seem to lack the basic sense of morality.
Yeah. Just to kind of poke and prod at you guys here. So I think too. So not to be confused with like, I hear the answers. Like I can agree in terms of when we're talking about like the perspective, like who defines it, that person. But I kind of want to go. We got some more people coming. I kind of want to go a step further in terms of like, okay, we have the perspective of people, like they defined it, and I think Kelly had shared like what ought to be done. So like another follow-up question I have to that is, how do we know what ought to be done, and like where does that ought come from? Like for example, just to make it super simple, we should treat each other kindly. Like where does that ought come from? You know, like for example, what's our justification to say, hey, you like ought to live this way, like you ought to do this, versus I just feel like you should do this. Does that make sense? Or
I think that that's a hard question to really answer, you know, because I think how Jordan mentioned, I think ultimately it does depend on a person. I know people, and I, for example, have also experienced knowing those who have been raised in a good environment, have been given love, and have still made decisions that you would think they would not have made because of the environment and society that they actually grew up in. You know, they were taught this is wrong, that this is right. And so they, you know, how do you explain that as well? You know, somebody has morals, but then they go beyond that. So is it really a moral to them if they know that it's right from wrong, but then they choose to abandon that moral? Do you get what I'm saying?
yeah. So like the question I would have too is, in terms of morality, like can we know what is moral and what is not, and then by what standard do we know? Like for example, sometimes I use extreme examples to make a point, but obviously I don't support this, but like Hitler, for example, right? Like where does we know like what he did was wrong, right? But if maybe me and Hitler are the only two on the planet, and then he says, hey, I'm going to take your stuff, like I'm just going to take it, and I say, well, you can't because that's wrong. Who's right? Like how do we know? Like does it just come down to an opinion? Does it come down to experience? Does it come down to like on Twitter people were talking to me about, well, empathy is the standard. Like what's the absolute foundation for something being right or wrong? And I think as humans, it's harder to define than we give it credit for. Like we'll say, well, because like, for example, I've heard empathy, I've heard harm, for example, like if it harms someone, then it's wrong, right? But now you have to talk about, well, how do you define what harm is? What's harmful to someone else might not be harmful to another person, things like that. So trying to understand where people are at in terms of, like, I think that we all internally know certain things are like wrong, right? But like, where does that come from? Like, where do I have the justification to tell someone, hey, you can't take that person's stuff? Like, why can't they take it? Is it just because, well, it's not nice, or well, just because, like, you don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, where does that come from? Where does that standard come from?
It goes back as far as watching Barney as a kid. I mean, you kind of know that, you know, it's kind of instilled in you as a child. You know,
Yeah.
your parents teach you that, you know, like she said, depending on what type of environment you grow up in. You know, I grew up in a pretty, you know, good environment, so I knew how to share. I knew how to, you know, not to take things from people,
Yeah.
and you carry that along with you throughout life, and then you pass it down to your children, and so forth. So it kind of starts, you know, out the womb. You're kind of trained for that as soon as you know, you're able to babble and walk around and do things. You know, I feel like it, and then it goes until, you know, until you pass over into what's next. You know,
Yeah.
so it's just something that, you know, is carried within you. I feel like, and it can also be a generational trait. You know, you could be a very heartwarming, giving person, or, you know, just by who your grandparents were. It could be a trait in you. You know, something that's passed down. So it could be instilled in you while you're still in the womb. You know, it could be
Yeah.
just part of your characteristic, your genetic makeup. It can go down as far as DNA. You know, so it's just something that's instilled in you from birth. Yeah. Either you got it or you don't.
I think it's
Yeah.
can you guys hear me? I got my mic
Yeah.
to work.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's
This is
comes
Damien,
down
right?
yeah. I think it comes down to the situation, you know, like obviously we know right from wrong. But what about situations like, for example, you know, like when COVID was going on, like 2020, you know, you would hear the news about, you know, this is shutting down, this is shutting down. And then you got guys like me. I was like, okay, if my job shuts down, I'm the only source of income in my household. So I know right from wrong, but what about survival? You know, like if something were to happen where you can't go to the store and get whatever, it's like, okay, well, you know, my family needs food. What do
Yeah.
I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
For
that
sure.
our morals really kind of are big defining moment as a humanity versus animal. I mean, look at in the animal kingdom, you have survival of the fittest, eat or be eaten, right? As humans, we know like some things are moral, like people get older, right? They need to go on medication. We just don't let people die off because they have diabetes. We're not like, oh, well, survival of the fittest. No, we have a moral compass. And that moral compass is tested and tried in situations just like he described of, well, I got families to feed. You know, Jean Valjean's going to steal a loaf of bread to help feed the kids, and he's going to spend X amount of time in jail for it.
Yeah.
Who's wrong? I mean, first, Utopia, Sir Thomas More wrote, first we make the thieves and then we punish them.
So that was the question I was gonna ask. With that, it's like, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you
Okay,
good
perfect.
now.
I was gonna ask that, like, how do you explain? Because, like I said, like I teaching in a lower income school and area. Like you just said, that we create the thieves and then we punish them. How do you explain, or how do you talk to a group of people or a group of kids, especially that grow up in the conditions they grow up in? They weren't, you know, they didn't choose that. It was just, you know, we all know it's a series of, there's some systematic things going on. The reason why that their families are where they are, you know, it's not all their fault, you know, because we've always been taught, if you work hard, you'll get here. But we also understand too that there are some things in place that no matter how hard you work, there's only so far that you can get to. And so they bring kids into the world, you know, people bring kids into the world, and these kids are growing up in these conditions. And so, like, how can you talk morality to kids that really just, they don't have anything, you know, and they see the world, they see what the world around them has to offer, but they don't have any, I don't want to say they don't see any means to attaining that other than through what society says is immoral.
And So that's the thing too. That's a good point to piggyback off what you said. Like, so society would say certain things are moral and immoral. Like, um, I would take it a step further that I actually believe that society does not set the standard for morality. I think morality is way bigger than humans, right? And I actually don't think morality changes. I don't think it changes at all. And I think that, for example, walk with me, for example. Now, I think that if I were to take something that's not mine, right? That's like and maybe in my mind, like I need it. Like I need to just take this from this person because I need to eat, right? I don't think morality then changes, but at the same time, I can still understand like thievery is thievery, regardless of the situation. Now that doesn't mean that it's a reality that happens, right? But I don't think that morality is like this pendulum that's like, well, now, for example, because I think that's what society does. Now it's okay to, I'm going to use extreme examples, right? Now it's okay to have slaves. Well, now it isn't. Now it's okay to do this. Well, now it isn't. I actually think morality, how I would define it, is consistent. And I think that morality, and I'll share a little bit more, but I just want to try to kind of poke and prod at you guys here on like my full position on it. But I think when you look at morality, I think you have to start somewhere outside of yourself, outside of humans, because I think that morality exists outside of us, right? So like, I don't think if there's 2 humans left and then they die off, well, now there's no such thing as stealing. There's no such thing as lying, right? There's no such thing as, like, I think there's a standard set before us, before we were even here created, I would say. And I think that as humans, I think we were created and we know like certain things are right from wrong. But like some of the more nuanced things, like we can understand like, hey, this person needs milk. My baby needs milk. So I'm gonna take the milk. That doesn't change that you stole it. It just means that you did what you had to do to survive, and not to like knock anyone or say, oh, look at you. You shouldn't have done that. But I don't think morality shifts. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Like if society is the standard for morality, then by what standard do we point to say, well, society, you're wrong here? Like, for example, if we are a society, just this group, and we say, man, taking people's stuff is good. Like, it's good with us. Like, we live in a whole different place. And then the society over there says, nah, taking people's stuff is wrong. What standard do we point to say that we're right? And what standard do they point to say that they're correct? Does that make sense?
Man, I got something to say. That's really tough to answer, because I mean, I think right now is tough because we're experiencing so much. It's like, well, I don't know if it's actually been worse, but some people say nothing's new under the sun. It's kind of tough to talk about that because we actually haven't experienced it, but we're experiencing some things now. And it's like, because we're starting to see these things occurring more frequently, is it going to become the norm eventually? Like where, people are just doing some wild and crazy things right now. It's kind of like, at this point, a question for you guys, morality, what is it going to change to, right now? At this point, like, the guy was talking about, Damien was talking about the pandemic and stuff like that. It's like, that's something that we've never seen before. It's almost like I kind of thought about like post-apocalyptic or something like that when he kind of mentioned it. And it's like, I seen today in Las Vegas, it's like they made a city in the desert, and it was like, I mean, it was crazy, all the stuff that they were doing. So it's kind of like, just all this stuff that we're experiencing now is kind of like, where's morality gonna shift to? What is it gonna shift to?
I want to circle back to answer or try to answer that question about what do we tell these children.
Yeah.
And it reminds
Thank
me a
you.
lot about, I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan, East Coaster here, and it's always beautiful in that neighborhood. And our neighborhoods aren't always so beautiful. But he always used to say, you know, you got to look for the helpers. And putting that onus on a kid is hard. Technically, adults should be looking to help those kids. It should not be kids looking for their own help. But at the end of the day, I'm afraid that's kind of how it might have to be, at least right now. In regards to like morality existing before humans existed, I think Jackie and I were talking about this earlier today. Like, who owns water? Why do people own water? How can you steal water? Like, you can steal a water bottle, right? But there's only so much potable water in the world. So how can anybody own it to then sell it to me when I need it to survive?
It's good. It's good, Kelly.
Can I say something really fast?
Yeah.
To piggyback off that, you know, I'm a health conscious guy. You know, you have the FDA. You know,
Let me grab my Coke real quick. Let me grab my Coca-Cola real quick. I'm playing.
Nah, you good. We rely on the FDA. He said, Joe said, poking and prodding. But nah, man. Nah, you good, bro. Listen, as a fitness guy, I don't force anybody to do something like you shouldn't do that. You can drink whatever you want to drink, just exercise. But anyways, but yeah, FDA, what happened is they administered these drugs that was safe for everyone, that they said it was safe for everyone. And then a report came out later, 4 years later, after everyone's been taking this drug, and they said it's okay, not just this one drug, but multiple drugs. They've been taking it, and then they've been seeing really bad things happening to the same people, you know, taking these same drugs, the same side effects happen. And like, it's like, basically they categorized FDA as a student, and they said based on what the FDA discovered, it was only like 64% safe. So they were like in the D's. They're D students. FDA is a D student. I'm just like, you know, it's crazy, and that obviously all of us probably won't think that's moral.
Right.
Jumping on the FDA. I mean, I'm sure most of you guys, well, if not, it's been, you know, how social media gets now. Everything gets circulated so quick. But I've seen so many posts from not only people here in the US, but people in other countries, how their food, things that are FDA approved here in the United States for us to consume, to put not only consume, but put on our bodies, whatever, has been approved for us, but is banned in other countries. And like he said, at that point, is it like, where are their morals? They're allowing us to consume these products, and at the end of the day, they're part of, you know, they're part of our country, and they're allowing us to get diseases, to, you know, die young, and it doesn't make any sense to me. You know, at that point, that's where you have to sit there and like he said, say, where are their morals?
Yeah.
It doesn't take much for people to throw their morals out the window, though. We seen that happen a couple summers ago when, you know, George Floyd passed. You know, when a lot of people were, you know, looting and tearing stuff, and that was nationwide. It wasn't just in Minneapolis. You know, it was here too in Des Moines. I seen people that, you know, be in church every Sunday trying to break into Target. You know what I'm saying? It's like
I experienced it.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It was terrible. You know, but the people who knew to, you know, to keep their morale and to, you know, to uphold their end on the their end of the bargain to society, you know, they didn't partake in those. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
We should have did better in stopping, you know, the looters and stuff, you know, because it's bigger than looting. You know what I'm saying? The situation was way bigger than looting and breaking into stuff, you know. But it, like I said, it doesn't take much for somebody to throw it all out the window for, you know what I'm saying, some brief satisfaction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think at some point too, though, we got to ask ourselves: is some of that, you know, a good moral in a way? Like you know, some people were out there trying to get their point across, you know,
Right.
and it's like you feel like that's the last option. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there was a lot of people that were out there just acting a fool, but what about that percentage of people that really believed that that was the right thing to do because they wanted to get the point across?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And see, what I think is really interesting about morality is that, like, I think it shows our lack of love for each other, obviously, quite a bit. But I also think it shows where there's opportunity to like help people. So, for example, going back to like the stealing thing. So if I'm in need, right, and I feel like I got to take this so that my family survives, I still think morality has a standard where it's like, regardless of what I feel, it's still stealing, but also I shouldn't have to steal, right? Like I should be able to have things provided just like the next person. And like, I believe we're all supposed to be taking care of each other, right? So when that's not happening and morality, for example, is violated, I think most people then go to, well, it's not really wrong because I needed it, versus morality has a standard. Like it's it if it's something, if it's to steal something, it's to steal something, even if you need it, right? But now the opportunity on the other side is, man, why do these group of people, or why am I constantly stealing? What's going on inside of me? What's going on in my environment that is causing me to do that? And then people from the outside that see there's a need, I think the right thing to do in morality, right, would be to help address that need. So when there's something wrong going on, the right thing to do is try to address that need. That's kind of what I think with that, and especially in terms of morality. I want to try to understand where you guys would get your own personal standard from. So like I've heard, so I put this on Twitter the other day, and a lot of people said empathy is the foundation, like empathy, the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. Another person said harm. So like, well, if it's harmful to someone, then, you know, that's not right. And then I kind of was trying to pick their brain a little bit about, well, then I think you have to define what harm is. I might get a little controversial here, so you can duck out if anyone needs to. But so like with gender equality, what's happening now, right? With you know, people that might say a child transitioning at whatever age, right, is fine. You know, someone else might believe, I don't think that's good for children. Well, now you have two competing ideas, and how do you know which one is right? Because now one person might say, well, it's harmful to do this. Another person might say, well, I actually think it's not harmful. Well, who is right? Does that make sense?
That's a hard one.
Because
I think
I
at
feel
the
like
end of the day, I think at the end of the day, it ultimately just it ends up being the decision of that person themselves. You know, a child is, regardless, you still need a parent's consent, regardless, even if they want to do something, the parent still ends up making the decision. You know, you can't just go and you know, transition and without a guardian or a parent's consent. So at the end of the day, I think it really just kind of, it comes down to the family itself. It really just depends on who's around, how you're raised, who's around you, society. And your morals, everybody's individual morals, like you said, you believe that there's a ground, you know, for morality. Like there's no switching what's moral and what's not. But at the end of the day, everybody decides what they believe their morals are, you know. Like I said, I have known people who've been raised bad and good and have turned out to be a bad or a good person, you know. It really just depends on the person at the end of the day.
Can I poke at that a little bit, Jackie?
Yeah,
can I poke at that a little bit?
I got some.
So no, this is good. So like, for example, let's say like two different moral views, right? So this person might say, I think, I'm trying to think of an example that's not too controversial, but like, I think I think my child should be able to do this, right? And the next person says, well, I think they shouldn't be able to. So why, for example, with parents needing to consent, like, why is that right versus it being wrong? Like, I think most people would say, well, it's right to have the parents consent to anything for their kids, but why though? And then why not have them not consent?
I think for me it's kind of like probably just a compilation of all your firsthand experiences or family experiences. Like she was saying earlier, it's like, you know, there was an experience that I had, and, you know, I'm gonna be fully transparent, but you know, I had family, you know, who did certain things to, you know, to their own family. And you know, my mom was like, hey, she's like, don't you know, don't do this, don't if your cousin sees you and you're walking home and you know, you get off the bus, don't let him take you home if he asks you to get in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if, you know, what if I would have made it another decision besides that and went against what she said? But she instilled in me, like, another thing, don't, even though this is your family members, don't open the door while you're at home all by yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, those type of things, it's like what you're saying too, is like, who says that that's right or wrong? But I don't want my son to do it.
Yeah.
I feel the same way towards my son. It's like, you know, if only open the door if it's me and your mom, and most likely maybe your grandparents. But, you know, that's how I am. Like, most family is, you know, it's just what I was kind of taught. But who says that that's right or wrong?
Because I think there's like for example, in law, you see we have laws where murder is wrong. You know, you can't rob people, things like that. So to the point of like everyone just kind of, each family, each person kind of decides their own morality. My pushback on that is that's not how we live, though, because you can't, like, if I want to say my morality is I could take what I want without people stopping me, well, people are going to stop me because they believe you shouldn't take what's not yours, right? So it's like, we don't even live in a world where everyone can live in their so-called own morality, right, if you will, especially with, like, when you think about like truth, for example, you hear a lot about, well, what's your truth? What's your truth? But I think it's interesting with morality. I think, like, for example, like, what's the truth? Because if we all would say we have our own truth in terms of like anything, we just don't live in a world like that, because it could be someone's truth that's like, man, I ain't going to work, I ain't doing this, but it's my truth that I'm a homeowner, so that makes me a homeowner. It's my truth that I'm a millionaire, so I need this money. We don't live in a world where whatever we think is, like, we just don't live in that type of world. So just kind of curious, like, on your guys' thoughts of that, because even if we have different views on morality, someone is deciding what we do with it, right? Like, we don't just get to live freely. Like, I can do what I want. You can do what you want to a degree, but there are also consequences that says, okay, yeah, you can do what you want, but you are going to live in this certain capacity. Like you will not take from others or will arrest you. You will not steal. You will not do certain things in school. You will or will not teach these things in school. Things like that. Does that make sense?
So I think I think it's with people. I think whatever people believe in, that's going to be what they play by. That's where they develop their morals by. Like, so I was raised in the church, right? I was raised in a Christian family, so my moral foundation came from a lot from the Bible. Like, this is what God said, right? So a lot of me, if I'm going to do or not do something, it's going to be based in that first, right? Whereas there might be another, my next door neighbor might not be based in that. Maybe they're just based in whatever the law says. That's what I'm not going to. You know what I'm saying? So the law and the Bible are two different things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's things that are, but you know what I mean. So like,
absolutely.
Whatever it is that you believe in, or your family, whatever it is that you believe in, that's the rules that you play by. And so you build it seems like people, from my observation, people build their morals based on that. So like the idea of like right or wrong or good and bad, I think we use those words based on our perspective. You know what I'm saying? Because like we talk about some of our laws, they, they benefit some and not others. You know what I'm saying? So if depending on what side of the line you're on, you're gonna look at them and like those are bad. Or if you're on the other side, this is a good law. You know what I'm saying? This is good for me and my family. You know what I'm saying? So I just think I really think it's wherever your foundation, because it's kind of hard it's hard for me to say that somebody should live by what I think is morally, right. You know what I'm saying? Like you talked about, gender equality and gender roles and things like that. Well, I may feel this way, but that's also coming from, you got to understand what place it's coming from. You know what I'm saying? It's coming from, this is my background. My background comes from, church and being a Christian. So therefore, I'm not going to view that as the same way. Now, the people that have an opposing view may think that the way I think is wrong. You know what I'm saying? So be it. And I may feel the same about them. You know what I'm saying? But that's just based on, because we're in, I guess, I don't want to say two different worlds, but we're in two different games, I guess, so to speak. You know what I mean?
So what do you say to the people that are stuck in the middle, like, or that are confused? Because, I mean, I don't know about everybody here, but, I was brought up in a neighborhood, like an actual like neighborhood where like what you see on TV, like, oh, that's a bad neighborhood, but it's not necessarily a bad neighborhood. But, you got like, for example, 1997, guy comes walking down the street with the Super Nintendo, tells my dad, hey, I'll sell this to you for $50. Got controllers, games, everything. And my dad's like, okay, my kids want it, so why not? But that the guy stole it. But then you go and, okay, now my dad's like, hey, don't ever steal in your life, but here's a stolen Super Nintendo. You know what I mean?
Right.
So where do you go with that? Like, how do you explain that to people that, obviously I know the difference between good and bad, but there's people that are brought up like that every day.
I think it's hard, just like Donnie said earlier, it's very easy to break, to break your morals, to go past it, to give in, and go beyond and make decisions that you probably never thought you would be in. But that's the thing, how Jordan said too, like it really is your experiences. I think it's firsthand experiences that really shape who you are, and what you decide is what the path that you're going to take. It really is what impacts your decisions on your right or wrong in the end of the day.
Just to throw another thing out there, I'm going to start pushing a little more, if that's okay. Are you guys ready?
Kelly, I want you to say something more. You got good inputs.
It's getting past my bedtime here. Don't want to fall asleep.
Yeah. I'm a push with this. Can we tell people how to live? Jordan had mentioned, for example, I think a lot of people can have this perspective too. Like, hey, like, who am I to, judge? Who am I to say what a person will do or like should do? I think this is a tricky question because I think initially we feel like, well, like, no, well, like, who am I? But I don't think we actually live like that. Like, for example, we are telling people how to live when you say you must adhere to certain laws. Like, that's telling someone how to live. When you say, well, these laws aren't right and these laws should be like this, or it should benefit these people, it should benefit everyone. That's actually telling someone how to live, right? On Twitter, I had tweeted something and this person said, I don't know for sure. She's like, I can't know for sure about anything. She said about anything. So I use an extreme example. I said, do you believe rape is wrong? For sure. I said, do you believe and her response floored me. She actually could not say that it was wrong for sure. She could not say, well, I can't say it's wrong for sure. I just don't. It has proven not to be good for society, not to be good for people. I think that is a crazy view, but also she has no justification to point to why it would be wrong, other than not other than, but like harm. It caused pain. True, all that stuff is true, but how do you objectively say it's wrong to the person who is like, well, you're just a human like me. It's your opinion versus my opinion, right? So just like, not necessarily talking to that extreme example, but I want to hear what you guys say about, do you think we can tell people how to live?
That's interesting, because when you brought up the whole, laws and things like that, you're right. In a sense, you are telling people, hey, you can't do this. This is okay, but this is not okay. And but I think also too, just as human beings, we understand that there has to be some sort of order. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. We see now, even with having some type of order, there's still a lot of stuff going on. But can we tell people how to live? I think I don't know if you would say it's in theory, but I guess like just speaking like this, no, I can't tell somebody that they should live like I live, because I think this is the right way to live. Like, I mean, because I don't know, what I'm saying, I don't know that person's situation. So like, I might look at them a certain way and think like, oh man, why they doing that? Like, that ain't it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think it's for me to judge that either.
Are we talking about topics like, for example, like smaller nuances, right? Like, hey, I'm not going to tell them what they should do with their house, how they should do things.
I think it's more like that. If we talking about like on the grand scheme of things, like yes, we have to. Because then if we don't, like, we're talking about grand scheme, yes, we have to have rules, we have to have laws. I mean, because with anything, I mean, let's just take something that probably we all know, sports, right?
Yeah.
No matter what sports you play, they all have boundaries, right? You can't just, like, I can't play basketball and be starting in this gym and then end up in Des Moines hooping in that gym and score a basket in Des Moines, and it
you ain't scoring in Des Moines. You ain't scoring in Des Moines. Not on me.
I'll score anywhere I want. I can shoot the ball from here to Golden State, and
let's not talk about that, man. At your wedding, Joe.
Okay. Anywho, y'all already, Ryan, you know what's up. Don't even start.
Here we go again. But okay.
Go, Jay.
But it has boundaries. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't just go to a different court and start hooping and then count on that court. You know what I'm saying? So otherwise there's chaos. You know what I'm saying? So I think on the grand scheme, yes, there has to be some type of standard that we as a society agree to. Right. And it may look different depending on, like I said, we talk about country to country basis, even state to state, or city to city, there's things that in certain areas, you know, that are tolerable, and in other places not so much. You know what I'm saying? So I think in that regard, yes, we have to. But when we talk about like the smaller things of life, person to person, I think it's kind of like it's a little different. You know what I'm saying?
If you're a parent, though, you are telling someone how to live.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's a hard concept to really, you know. So some people, I mean, at the end of the day, you're shaping that individual to be an adult and make their own decisions. So in the end, you're shaping those little things that you're saying you can't tell somebody how to live by. You're telling them how to dress, how to clean, how to take care of themselves. You know, I mean.
So I
got
agree.
something.
I
got something.
I agree and I disagree with that only because of this. When we grew up, we always were told we were an extension of our family. So when we were in the house, we had to dress a certain, you know, we had to dress a certain way. We had to carry ourselves a certain way, because when we step outside, it wasn't just we were representing. I'm not just representing Jordan Crusoe. I represent, you know, Donald and Melanie Crusoe as well. So I'm an extension of them. Like we're essentially one body. Like we are one family. Now, when I leave that household and now I have my own household, I have my own family, now how I carry myself outside of that, I still represent my family to an extent, but I'm more so representing the family of me, like, you know, Jordan's family, not so much Donald and Melanie's family. You know what I mean? So I think in that regard, it's like, yeah, you're telling somebody how to live, but it's because of we are technically one. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like we're figuratively, I would say figuratively, we are one person. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking to little me. Like, hey, we ain't doing that. You know.
Kelly, any inputs?
Kelly, you sleeping?
No, not yet.
We need
I
to
feel
put
like
those
this is
cameras
just like
on.
this is like an impossible question. Like, sure, you can tell people what to do all day. They don't gotta listen to you, even if you did tell them. People do that now.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you can, and people do.
What I'm getting at with that question is back to the morality thing is like, for example, people will say like this should not be law and this should be law, and I feel like that's just an example. All these type of things are like moral questions, like what you should do, shouldn't do, ought to do, or like ought to not do, right? So oftentimes when we hear, well, I just don't feel like this is right, that kind of goes back to, well, we're either going to tell someone how to live and it's going to be right or it's going to be wrong. And I don't think there's like some in between in terms of like, hey, we may not know what's right and what's wrong, but more like the overarching things. Like, for example, we will tell people for sure, like, hey, you can't go kill another person. But what do you say objectively though to the next person, like Hitler, for example, who says, no, I think I am going to kill. Like, what are you going to say objectively? And then like, for me, like what do you say like to someone who is like, I don't agree that like I should not be able to do X, Y, Z? Like, what's the objective standard versus like more of a subjective standard of, you know, hey, it's just what it is, man. Like, that's just what we do. It's how we live society. Does that make sense? Or?
So what do you say to, what do you say to, like you said, you can't go kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
So what do you say to,
or murder, I would say.
Right. So what do you say to like a police officer or a soldier, you know, that essentially they could, you know, and you get to that point, like you can tell everybody else, hey, you can't kill nobody, but then you got like a diehard Marine that's like, I can go kill whoever I want overseas, you know, like, what do you say to that though, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like everything is case by case, but we just don't have the luxury of going and combing through everything. So we invented laws.
Yeah.
And we kind of hope they work. But like, for
Yeah.
instance, Piper Lewis killed a man, like, period, end of sentence. That's
Right.
true.
Right.
For me, she did a community service. She took
Right.
a rapist off the street. Okay. So how immoral could it have been? She saved her own life.
Right. Yeah. So I would say too, like, I think there's a difference between, like, I don't think all death is murder, right? There's a difference between an unjust death versus a just death, right? I think that most people could agree.
But the
For
police
example,
would prefer that we didn't play Batman, that we aren't out here vigilante styling it.
Absolutely. And so, like, and especially in extreme cases, like in the cases of rape, where a woman is raped, most people would believe, hey, like, if the rapist dies or is killed, like, that's a just death, versus someone who didn't do anything wrong, that would be classified as murder in terms of morality sake, right? Like, it would be unwarranted.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Can I say something real fast? Sorry to interrupt. Is that Damien?
No, yeah, go ahead.
My bad, man. So this is what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm gonna go off what what's the girl that
Kelly.
Kelly, yeah, what Kelly mentioned earlier. I just kind of think about, like, you know that's real. You know, you got your close family members who, you know, say that they died or something like that, and you knew who was responsible, and you had the opportunity to kill this person, but you knew that if you kill this person, you could go to jail, you know what I'm saying, or prison, for me personally. And it's like, or could I kill this person, you know, without anybody knowing? And I know I'm not going to go to jail or prison. It's like, for me, I have a fear of going to prison. I mean, that's just, you know, if I could do it without, you know, nobody knowing, it's kind of like,
without consequences.
yes.
But there are consequences.
Hey, look out for him. Look out for him, man.
You would
there's
know.
Those laws.
That's where
You
we say,
you
though,
beat me, bro.
that's where you say, though, that some laws are in favor for some and not in favor for the other. You know, there's two sides to the law. There's always going to be a person losing at the end of the day when it comes to it. So, and the law, it's the law of the land, right? That's what we had. There's laws for everything. I mean, it's hard to get past it. Like you said, yeah, if there wasn't any structure, if there wasn't any consequences to our actions, I think most people's morals would go out the window.
Yeah. What was you about to say, Kelly? I thought you were saying something.
I don't remember.
You were saying,
he said no one would know, and I said, well, you would know that you killed a man.
Yeah, okay.
And you would have to live with that. And maybe some people, before they did it, like, look at, you know, let's loop Alexander Hamilton into this somehow. Let's loop Hamilton in. Aaron Burr has to live with the fact that he killed his friend.
Yeah.
And now he's on the run. And now other people know about it in that situation. But can you live with the fact that you took a life and there may be consequences in a possible next life scenario? Heaven, hell, purgatory, whatever that means to anybody. Or maybe you don't think there's anything after this.
Yeah.
I think quick, just something super quick. I think it's just kind of like the circumstance that you're in at that moment. Just that circumstance. I don't know. Maybe you had a really bad day and you're like, you have anger inside of you, or something happened to you.
Yeah.
You're like, you know, I have these emotions. Like, do you guys really understand how emotions are? Like, as human beings, emotions are crazy. They go up and down, up and down, up and down, constantly, all the time. So it's kind of like, it's just at that defining moment, like what circumstances right now did you go through this day for you to make this decision? So it's based off your emotions. It's based off your emotions. And I'm not saying, and that's the thing about life, is kind of like, you really don't know what you'll do unless you're in that predicament.
Yeah.
I've never, nobody has ever killed my, no one has ever killed a close family member that I know about. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't know what I would do, but it's just kind of like she said earlier, Kelly is just,
Yeah. I want to throw something out here. We're hitting the hour mark. Anyone jump off if you need to. We can keep going. I just want to hit this while we're at the hour mark. I want to let me add this. Oops. So I want to share, I guess, kind of just where I'm at on this. Obviously, completely fine to disagree. Can have dialogue. You don't even have to like engage with it now. But just something to think about that I think is, I guess it's not going to be thought provoking to everyone, but I think it's something to consider. So this idea like morality, right? Like, where does it come from? Like, I think about the question, by what standard do we say anything is right or wrong? Do we say anything, right? I'm going to throw my position out there and kind of how I come to this conclusion. I'm try to be as succinct as possible. I might miss some points, so feel free to grill me after. I think when it comes to morality, I think it's extremely challenging. I think it's extremely hard to make a case for morality without it being a faith-based position. Now, this is going to springboard into a lot of different areas, I'm sure. But like, for example, I think morality has a standard, right? Like, and it doesn't change. It doesn't change. It doesn't change because I want it to change, because I feel like it, because society says, because 2 or 3 people agree. Even if a bunch of people agree, I don't think anyone's agreement has any weight on what morality is. I think because if you have 5 people in a room and everyone has something different to say about morality, I think there's an objective truth to morality, and it's not subjective. Like, I think you should be able to do this. Next person says, no, I don't agree. And next person says, I don't agree. Who is right? I think that in terms of morality, to make a objective case for it, I think it has to be outside of yourself. So what I mean by that is, like I told you before, I'm a faith guy, right? So I believe in God. I believe that God is the standard for all morality, right? Hear me out here. So here's an example of what I mean by that, right? Think about I feel like morality it inevitably bleeds over into a faith position. Now, you don't have to be like, oh, Christian, Buddha, whatever. Like, but I think to begin to even make a little bit of sense of it, I think it has to bleed into a faith position. So, for example, God is a standard. I believe He is perfect, right? He created us. So if it's true that God created us, He knows what's best for us and how we are to live, right? So think about a person who starts a restaurant, like an owner who starts a restaurant, and it's like, this restaurant is for the purpose of eating steak and drinking wine, right? This is the purpose of the restaurant. And he opens it. And then we all go in, and we had the steak for a little bit, but like, we don't want no more steak. We like, actually, I'm playing golf in here. I'm hooping in here. I'm doing everything else. It don't matter. I don't care what this restaurant is for. I'm shooting my podcast in here. I'm working remote from here. And the owner's like, no, like I built this, for people to come and have steak and eat and drink wine. And he knows the purpose for his building, like what he crafted, right? I feel like it's the same way with God. Now, it doesn't just get you right to like what I believe about God, but I think if you start with that, you can begin to actually make sense of morality. Otherwise, you're just pointing to something, like you're pointing to someone, you're pointing to a society, you're pointing to your experience, you're pointing to an opinion of another person. But with God being perfect, right? He knows if it's true that he created us, right? That's what I believe. He knows exactly what's right and what's wrong and what you would opt to do. If he created you, then he would know how you were to live, and he would actually, God would actually be the only one who could say what is right and what's wrong. Now we can like either like live within that reality, or we can live without that reality. The challenge is, and it's okay to disagree, if you don't point to a standard outside of yourself, objectively, like things can be wrong to you. I'm not saying that they can't be wrong to you or you can't feel a certain way. What I'm getting at is you can't objectively say anything is wrong. Like you can feel that you don't like it. You can like firmly disagree, like, no, I wouldn't do it. But you can't objectively tell anyone that like certain things are wrong because you're just a human like them. You're on the same playing field. But God, if he created everyone, he can say, hey, this is how you ought to live. I would know I made you. This is how you should treat the planet. I would know I made it. This is how you should treat each other. I would know because I created you. This is how you should speak to one another kindly, not being angry with them and things like that. I would know because I created you. But I think in terms of morality, like we all fall short, right? Like no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm going to make a mistake. I made mistakes today. I'm going to make wrong choices tomorrow. But morality doesn't just hold you in shackles and being like, oh man, like I wasn't good today. I'm not good enough today. Like you're never going to reach the pinnacle of morality. You're never going to be perfect, but you have to live within this space where, man, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to be faced in situations where, yeah, I might have to just do what I got to do. That's a reality. But it's okay though. So I think that, like, what I'm getting at is too, I'll just share this briefly and I'd love to get your feedback on this. Again, completely cool disagreeing. So I don't know how familiar anyone on here is with the gospel. So what I think is it comes down, for me anyway, it has to come down to a faith position, I believe. But then I think the answer is the gospel, right? In terms of morality, everyone fails, everyone does things wrong. The gospel is that God, being fully man, fully human, came to earth and he died for what some people might adhere to as like sins, right? He died for your sins. He died for all the things that you do wrong, all the morality that's broken. He died for that, right? He was raised again on the third day, brought to life. And those who trust in him, and we talked about briefly, someone had shared about, the next life, right? Like for those who trust in him, who repent and trust in him, have everlasting life or are granted everlasting life. And then within that framework, because you have a starting point being God, you're able to pinpoint, okay, this is the standard because God says so. Now that gets to like, biblical stuff. It gets to like, well, what about other faiths and like what they would say, things like that. Oh no, you're fine.
I think somebody might be trying to join again. Can you?
Oh, sorry. Let me see. Oh, Kelly. And let me see. I think I might have missed. Is that? Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that bleeds into like a whole nother like, well, who says, for example, your God is the way, and who says your person is the way. But I think without some kind of faith position, because obviously you can just have faith in yourself, right? But I think it all boils down to some faith position. It's within yourself. It's a society. It's experience. I would argue you could trust, if it's true, right? You can trust the person that created you about how to live far more than a society, than yourself, or anything. It's kind of a lot to unpack, but it's kind of where I'm at on that. And I know that can bleed into a lot of different areas of like, well, who says like, you're right, things like that. But that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's hard to make sense of it.
I think you can go really deep into everything that you just said, because at the end of the day, like who's to say that, and this could go even deeper into like religion too, you know? So you bring religion to, it's like, who's to say that what God says it's right? You know, who's to say there is a God, you know? But I do believe that at the end of the day, it, like you said, it has to come kind of, to faith, whether it's in you and another person, and faith in your future. You know, I don't think it necessarily has to be in a person either. If I have faith in being a doctor someday, I'm going to take the path to do the right things. Like he said, I'm not going to jeopardize doing something that's going to put me in jail if I want to have a good career. You know, it ultimately depends on you, and I think your faith, your desires, and just kind of what you hold dearest to you, because you're not going to go be, and even, I guess, you get pushed to your limits. Like you could go, you know, and make the wrong decisions, but
like I said, your circumstances at that time.
Yeah,
Emotions.
I definitely think that morality comes from a faith standpoint, but you know, just looking at it on the other side of things is that, you know, much like Jackie was saying, it's like if a person doesn't believe in God, I mean, you can't really put that standard on them because it doesn't apply to them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't matter how much we wanted to, because in that case, like you said, it still comes from a place of faith, but faith in what? You know what I'm saying? What is your faith in? Because if you're in a different religion, or maybe you have no religion, maybe your faith is just in the world that you live in, you know, your society, your state, your city, your country, whatever it may be. So that's where your morality is going to come from. And so it's, you know, I say this and not to be blasphemous, but you're like you said, your faith comes from whatever your God is. You know what I'm saying? Right. So whatever it is that you worship, if it's a person that they put money at the top of thing, they're going to do whatever they can for money, and morally to them it's right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, it allowed me to be closer to money. It allowed me whatever it is, it's going to get you closer to that thing that you hold high, hold near and dear. I mean, that's where your morality lies. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it's even said in the Bible where your treasures, you know, I don't want to misquote it, my bad, but alluding to the treasures of your heart. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, you know, I just think like, you know, I agree with you. You know, if faith, you know, that's where my morality is going to come from. It's like, what did God say? All right. Well, of course, like you said, I'm going to fall short, but at the end of the day, that's where I'm going to look to first. If I'm in a situation where I feel like, all right, I'm conflicted, you know, like Joe, you know, I do acting. So like in acting, I'm going to look at a role and I'm like, all right, is this role honoring to God? You know what I'm saying? Now I've auditioned for some stuff, but I didn't get some stuff, but there was some stuff that they got handed to me. It was like, hey, you want to do this role? And I looked at it and I was like, nah, because that's getting too far away from where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? There's only so much that I'm willing to do, but that comes from, you know, my background and my foundation. So there's certain things that I'm just not going to take because it's going to be getting away from. But then you have other people that's in this industry too, that they're going to take whatever role because they just want to be there. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you watching like from what I don't know, I haven't watched it, but I think it's like P-Valley, there's a dude on there that he be on some outlandish stuff, and you know what I'm saying, but it's okay for him, and I say it's okay for him only because he took the role and he did it, so clearly it's okay. If it wasn't, he wouldn't have did it. You know what I'm saying? So but for me, like if I got offered that role, I have to turn it down. You know what I'm saying? It's not, it don't sit with me. You know what I'm saying? So
I got something to piggyback off of. Just kind of.
I think one of the girls might want to talk. Sorry.
It's good.
Hey,
I'll just briefly say something. It's just about, you know, the Bible says your idol. What is your idol?
There you go. Here you go.
That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you mentioned P-Valley. Which role? Because I mean, there's multiple men.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't watch the show. I just heard and saw some memes. That's all I did. I don't know. There was I guess there's a guy that.
Because I watch P-Valley, and there's
what are some of the roles? I honestly don't know. I just heard that there was a guy on there. He just be wilding out, and I guess
Nah, my wife watched it for a little bit,
I think
okay.
this
yeah,
kind of is really good. I don't know, but I guess the Clifford, the owner of the strip joint or whatever.
Okay.
I feel like you're talking about the rapper.
Okay.
Because to the public, he wants to seem like he isn't who he really is. But behind closed doors, he's sleeping with the owner of the club.
Okay.
Mm.
So I think
Okay.
talking about, but yeah.
Okay. So that it might be him then, because I know I just heard people talking about it. I was like, yeah, that's. But for me, that just wouldn't be a role that I'd be interested in. Like, it just doesn't. It doesn't fit.
It makes sense. Yeah.
It doesn't fit my, the world that I know, or what I consider for myself. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, I wouldn't be able to do that. But like I said, like Ryan, Ryan quoted, whatever your idols are. So I mean.
So that's good. That's good. I appreciate that. So in terms of like morality, would most of you guys sit at like, hey, like I can tell like people like what's wrong for me, morality wise, but like I can't tell someone what's wrong for them. For example, are there anything in terms of morality that's wrong for everyone, regardless about what they believe, or is morality subject to what a person believes? Like, are there any parts of morality that are universal for everyone? Like, hey, it doesn't matter what you believe, it's wrong for you to do this. Like, do you guys hold to any of that? And if so, where do you get that from? And if not, why? And then where do you get that from as well?
That's one of those
good
things.
question,
Joe. I think that's one of those things that society agrees upon, because there are. I mean, when we talk about religion, right? There are things in every religion that is just universal. Like, everybody has these set of standards, or that are pretty much universal. And then even when you look at people's laws, this is universal. Killing across the board, I think, has always been like, no, we're not doing that. Like, nobody's killing. You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be a consequence for killing, no matter where you go in the world. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be a consequence for it. I think for the most part, the same thing for stealing and things like that. I think there's things that's just universal. Now, where do we say that comes from? Well, again, it depends on what it is that you are. For me, it came from the Bible. So the laws that we have here in the U.S., can't kill, steal, this, that, and the other, all that stuff came from the Bible. But that's a crossover. So I think that in a lot of those ways, those things we're going to meet eye to eye on, right? But then you talk about, like I said, like where we have, some of the things that choices are, like, kids are able to choose genders and things like that, where there are some conflicts, or where there's some butting of heads when it comes to people that are Christians or faith-based, whatever the religion is, compared to society-based. You know what I'm saying? I think there are some things that cross over universally, but then there are things that, again, I think that's where you see the divide. Is like, all right, well, this person has a different set of beliefs than I do. You know what I'm saying? So there's things there are certain things that they may not agree on.
Yeah, Kelly, I know you had just stepped back. What I had asked them was, in terms of morality, I think I've heard a lot tonight, like, hey, like, this is what I adhere to. Another person might not adhere to that, like, and that's okay. I think that's probably true for like certain things, right? But do you feel like there's certain things that are wrong for someone, no matter what they think? And then if so, where do you get that standard from? And if not, where do you get that from? And I think the latter is kind of a harder position, right? Like, I think, so yeah, I just kind of wanted to get people's thoughts on that. Like, what, I think I've heard a lot tonight that we define morality for ourselves, and the next person does for themselves, but not on like bigger issues. And kind of what I'm trying to understand is, why not on the bigger issues, but like some of the smaller ones? Does that make sense? Or
yeah, can you define better, like, bigger issues? Like, I would say, like, morally, incest is wrong. Like, you can't. For me,
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, like scientifically will mess things up
Okay. Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
line
So
for
that would
generations.
that would be one. And yeah, also, so like obviously murder, for example, like no matter what someone thinks, like you would say, no, you're morally wrong to kill someone for no reason. What I'm getting at is like, how come in this pocket it might be, hey, my morals here, like I'm living this way and that's what I do. But then in the other pocket, some of the more weightier things, right? I think you had appealed to science, right? So like, would science be like a standard for these things, or like would harm be like a standard for it? Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, that
I
makes
got
sense.
something to say.
yeah, go Kelly, and then we'll go Ryan.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think obviously, and I think people have already touched on this, like Christians, we get a way out. What would Jesus do? That's all we got to ask. You know, that's the basis. Would he or wouldn't he? And we get to live with that. I don't know. I don't know if there really is. I think it is subjective. Like I said, everything's case by case. We just don't have the time. So we made up these calculations, and we said, okay, so if X equals Y, then murder is bad. Like, we made these up so that we can speedily, quote unquote, speedily process right from wrong in society and move on with our lives. We created the formula. Where did the formula come from? You mentioned the Bible. American laws come from the Bible. Where'd the Bible come from? A bunch of white guys got together and wrote shit down, and they voted on it, right? And they kept some and they got rid of others. Okay, so man, and so can I trust morals that come from strictly white men? I don't know.
Right. So you would say like. So you would say.
Oh, now we've got.
So you would say, generally, like we made up morality. Like, did I hear that kind of right?
Yeah,
like, we don't know.
human.
We don't know exactly where it comes from, but like we decided.
Yeah, people. I mean, like in like they met at the Geneva Convention. I guess it was. I think. Nope, that's not it. But they met and they made decisions. And like I said earlier, like that defines our humanity versus the animal in us. Like in the animal world, can you steal food? No, the food is in the forest. It belongs to no one. You couldn't possibly steal something.
Right.
So
like,
yeah.
So like when I think you had referenced when people got together and wrote stuff down and kind of like in your mind, is that where you see morality beginning, or like what about before that?
I think
like I referenced the Bible, but like what about like before I think the like
I'm thinking like ancient times. I took 5 years of Latin, and so I know quite a bit about Roman history and
the Roman Ottoman Empire and stuff.
Yeah, the Romans were interesting characters because like, you know, we think of the Romans and we think of gladiators, and they would throw these like massive like murder fests essentially for entertainment. Yeah. And but then they would enslave the people they conquered. It didn't matter what they looked like. They're like, oh, we took you over, you're a slave now. Like, doesn't matter. But then they would do weird stuff. Like the Romans were known to be bulimic. Like they would eat until they were full, and then they'd puke it back up, and then they'd eat some more because they were like, this is fun, this is nice. So I mean, sure, they had something written down, like you have senators, and murder was illegal in, you know, situations, but I mean, we become more human we establish more morals, I think, as time goes on.
Okay. So that's interesting. Go ahead, Brian. Yeah, that's interesting.
So I think I actually kind of like mentioned this from the very beginning, is like it's your faith and then how you feel when you do something. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like it's like, what is that gonna do to, you know, your brain? How's that gonna react? You know, what signals is that gonna send to you as a person when you're doing something, when you're acting, or when you like believe in God, when you see when he's like, you know, you have a bad day, you have a down day, but you know, joy cometh in the morning. You know what I'm saying? You have a great day. It's kind of like, it's just like, you just, for me, it's my faith. But then there's a whole nother side to this. Is like, I have my faith and I believe in Lord Jesus Christ and I believe in God. But you have priests doing stuff to kids, and it's like, why am I on this track? Why am I on track, and why are they on this track? Because, you know, worshiping Jesus, right? But then I morally don't believe that's okay to do something to a child, and they believe so. So it's tough. You know, it goes both ways, but
Yeah, and that's why I think, like, again, like with a faith position of any kind, right? Like, the religious person will point to, you know, their God to say it's wrong, right, or something's right, and then the person who might point to, like, well, society, you know, experience, kind of what we've learned, like that's the standard. What I think is interesting is, like, you guys think, do you guys think there actually is a standard, or like not? Like, do you think you can know anything, or
What
like
do you mean?
can you not really know? We're
I
just
think
kind
the
of,
only thing that you can ever know is what you've experienced. You cannot say for sure. You cannot be 100% for sure about something or have knowledge about something that you've never experienced. So I think it comes back to, like, how you said, can we tell people kind of how to live? Like, yeah, you can tell people. You can
yeah,
tell people what their morals should be, but at the end of the day, are you going to convince them? Are you going to get through to them? Not necessarily. You might get through to some, but maybe
well,
those people had similar experiences as you that they can relate to you, which will convince them to see your point of view. It's hard
yeah,
for people who've experienced different things to see eye to eye or to understand each other's perspectives. It's
I agree.
no, yeah, and I agree. I think what I'm getting at is, like, for example, I'll use an extreme example. So, like, everyone here would say rape is wrong in any case, right? Like, you wouldn't say there's nuance to rape, right?
right.
Right.
Why?
Because rape is always something that you don't want to happen to yourself, especially. Like, some people say, in marriage, you're married to somebody, so rape doesn't count because you're married to them. No.
Yeah,
If it's a no, it's a no. If it's unwanted, it's not right. It doesn't feel right. You don't want it. You don't want it to happen. And if somebody forces themselves on you, I feel like it just leaves you scarred. Like, you, and like some people even end up blaming themselves because that happened to them.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, it's not even their fault. It's not their fault that that person wanted that to happen then and there. And then, especially with marriage, I feel like they contemplate, because it's like, okay, I'm married to this person, but
yeah.
I mean, is it right? Is it wrong? And I personally feel like that's wrong. Like, no, if you don't want it, you don't want it. Then they should respect that.
So
It's the harm.
that's
Yeah.
good. So I think, with, like, that's an extreme example, and that's very a very easy thing to say is wrong, right? So what I think is
Mhm.
thing is, we all can agree that that's 100% wrong, like, no matter what, right? And what I think I heard the standard was because you wouldn't want it done to you. Was that be correct?
Yes.
So what about the things you believe are wrong that you would say 100% is wrong, that someone actually wouldn't mind being done to them? For example, you would say,
Are you saying like
sorry, go ahead,
sodomy,
Kelly.
for example? Like the Bible says sodomy's bad, but some people, they don't think that's wrong. That's their life.
They don't. Yes, that's right. So, like, where do you point to for the standard to say it's 100% wrong because like you might say like it harms, which is true, but like is
Well-
the standard actually kind of like that golden rule? Like, because I don't want it done to me, like, is that the actual standard? Whatever I don't want done to me.
I think it just falls on a scale system. Like,
Okay, yeah,
obviously murder, rape, that's like the top of the scale. Like, everybody
Right.
just knows. Like, you
Yeah,
don't do that. If
Yeah.
you do that, you're wrong. And then it goes down, like stealing things, it's wrong, but survival,
Yeah.
And then it goes down to like, I don't know, like, hey, my wife lets me go to the strip club, but your wife doesn't. Does that mean
Yeah.
that it's wrong? Like, I think it's just all on a scale system.
So, okay, I'm going to poke a little bit. This was asked me on Twitter. I do think it's sort of a ridiculous question, but I think they were trying to get to a point. So in terms of like the rape thing, right? Let's say two people are left on the planet, a man and a woman, and one doesn't want to have sex with the other. Would it still be wrong to rape that rape happened?
Yes.
It would.
I said the
Yes.
same thing. I said the same thing, but this
Because
person on
the
Twitter did not say the
implication is
same
that he or she should feel obligated to help
Right.
repopulate the earth.
Yeah.
But what happens if they find out that neither of them are able to conceive?
thing. Right.
Like, then
Yeah.
it's all for nothing.
Because that's possible too.
Yeah.
Hey, look, rape is rape. Let's just put that out there. I don't know who asked the question, and I
It
know
is
they
what
said
it is.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Look, listen. If it, because it kind of like when you were Joe, you were talking about like, well, is it an offense or is it morally wrong if somebody wants that done to them? Well, if we take rape for example, if somebody wants that done to them, it's not rape. It's consensual. You wanted that.
Right.
If you ask for it, it's different. It's not rape. Rape is the non-consent, right?
Right.
That's the no effect. So that's
So
still rape.
is consent the standard then for morality? Because so what I think is interesting is like I still
I mean,
think
yeah.
so I still think
If I told you you can come over here and take my TV, then it's not stealing because I said, hey, you can Joe, come over here and take my
Yeah,
no,
there
TV.
you go.
no, sure. So what I'm saying, like consent in terms of like the standard of obviously like rape, it doesn't make it rape because it's consent, but like I still think you have to point to something other than harm to objectively say something is right or wrong. Like what I'm getting at is I see a lot of like it's subjective, right? It's at the end of the day, I'm not talking about rape. I don't want to make light of rape, but I'm saying like a lot of like what I would feel people would say is moral or not moral. It truly is subjective if you think about it, and it comes down to like it's preference, it's your opinion.
It could go back to your podcast from yesterday.
Yeah, like if you're not pointing to something, some standard, then how can you objectively say something is? That's what I think is interesting. And I think at the end of the day, we all could like adhere to this kind of we just know. But how do you know that? Like how do you just know? And then what about the sector of people that don't just know, right? I'm not talking about in the cases of rape and things like that, but getting back to like how Jackie said, like yesterday I asked we were talking about abortion and women's rights and stuff, and she had shared some things, and I kind of asked like she said she said for example like abortion should be like she's for abortion like all the way through, and then I asked kind of how did she come to that conclusion? When was the first time she even encountered abortion? And then I asked, is there any stages at like where you would say like you're not for it, for example? And I think, and someone retweeted this, they quoted, to have a child should always be an intentional choice or something like that. Like basically you should want it. And I think I asked her this, and I asked this to everyone. Like I have a son. I asked, like if my son like was like could have been aborted, like should he have, if like he was like if his mom was denied that act, right, to be able to have one, should he not be here? She had trouble answering that question because it's like, it pulls on the heartstrings and stuff. And I'm like, she said, well, I think like inside the womb is like a snapshot. It's a different snapshot in time. She said a lot of people talk about like the child outside the womb because you can see and touch and feel and all that stuff. So she's like, I don't see them as two consistent things. My pushback on that is like, to me, it's all linear, right? Like my son just turned 1. So for him to be 1, he had to be born. And also, obviously, with like science and stuff, you can see, your child developing in the womb and things like that. So like for her, it was like, to her, it was like, she said like, oh, it's just a clump of cells to me. It's not, it's not special in that moment. But now outside the womb, like she has children, it's a different snapshot for her. So that's her standard, right? And she would say that should be the standard for everyone. But I would say like, I would point to a standard of God, right? And what he would say about those things. But also with my son, I could look at him inside the ultrasound and be like, hey, that's actually more special to me than him being outside of the womb, because he has to go through that to get to here, right? So I think when you're talking about like morality and right and wrong, there's nuance. But I think to have anything be objective, you would have to point to something that's not an opinion, right? It's not just what society says. It's not just what experience says. And a lot of people adhere to like science, right? Because science is like the most objective thing, like in their kind of scope of what they know. So that's kind of what
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So here's the funny thing is like, we're talking about, Kelly mentioned laws and stuff earlier, but, I kind of touched on that maybe a little bit. Jordan did too, but it's like, you mentioned your son, his age, it's kind of like we adhere to whatever, whoever said that your son is 1 year old when he was 9 months in the womb. Why is he
That's
1
funny.
year old, a 1 year old, and he's been a human being forming at 9 months?
That's funny. I said it to my
throughout that whole
family.
9
That's
months,
funny.
it's like why are we calling our kid 1 year a 1 year old, which logically, mathematically doesn't make sense. But yeah,
So I
it's just
think
like why.
the wording
I'll
is
go.
like
I'll
1 year. The wording is like 1 year old, but we know that we're celebrating them being born like from the womb. But no, I get you with that, because I was just having that talk with some people.
The child hasn't taken its first breath independently of of the mother.
But what's interesting too about that is like, I know that gets to the dependency thing, right? But at the same time, like if I leave my son just right there in the back and then walk out the house and never come back, he's not gonna live.
No,
like he wouldn't live.
No,
because he's still.
Here's a. Let's go back to what Joe said though. Like, are we discounting the experience that the mother had to go through for bearing that child? Like all that stuff. No. I'm not talking about. I'm just going back to what Joe was saying. Okay. But it's like, discounting. I mean, it's a lot of work, and we don't even thank women enough. And back then they used to have multiple children. Nowadays it's like, man,
one and done.
But all right, I'm done. I'm gonna let someone else talk.
Okay. I think personally, when it comes to that sort of subject, especially with abortion, I feel like once a baby is formed, to me, it's a life. And then depending on each woman, of course, because not all women can carry the same and not every situation is the same. I think that I've seen certain situations where it's either the mother or the child, and it's sad. So when it comes to that, personally, I've always said it's me before the child. And I mean, some of you might disagree, but I feel like if I could form a child, I could do it again. But me, there's not going to be another me. So, I mean, that's a sensitive subject, but that's how I feel like I could always make another life.
So I got another side. Like, honestly speaking from firsthand, I'm a premature baby. I was a premature baby. I was born 2 pounds. And my mom was told that I wouldn't be able to do a lot of stuff that I was told by the doctor. Like, the doctor said I wouldn't be able to talk. I wouldn't be able to walk. I wouldn't be able to breathe on my own. Like, just a bunch of different stuff. But I'm here. My mom chose me first and not herself, or she chose to have me, even though, like they said, she would also have a complicated birth. And both me and my mom almost passed when I was born. So it's like she chose, it was Daisy that spoke about that, but it's like, who chose, she chose me, and she wanted to bear me first before she was like, they just knew that potentially she was gonna, not make it through the pregnancy, but she wanted me to be born. So,
side note, do you think it's something just with boys? Because I feel like that's a lot of stories with boys. Is like when we in. I don't want to get. Forget it. I'm gonna get specific. Young black boys, because the same thing happened with myself. My mother told me the story about how, like, I wasn't a preemie, but just the complications that the hospital was like, doctors was listing off and like, oh, this child is not going to be this, and this. We don't know if it's going to make it. We're recommending that you abort this child. And so it was like, because even if this child's born, this child is not going to be normal. Like we just see like it's going to have this, and this. And so like normal, that's that's perspective. That's who you're talking to. But I mean, in my eyes, I came out pretty normal. My mama chose, same here. My mama chose me, but it's just right. You know what I'm saying? But it's interesting because I hear a lot of black men have similar stories where it's like, yeah, they said I wouldn't. They was trying to abort me. I'd be kind of curious. That's a side conversation, but I'd be curious.
Well, here's another question to both sides. Who's to say that Ryan, like, who's to say your mom made the right decision? What if something would have happened to her and you would have survived? Who's to say that you were the one who was supposed to survive and not her? So it's those are just very like
basis.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say I think that subject is just based on relationship basis, like you and the partner. Like, okay, we talk about this. If push ever comes to shove, what are we gonna do? Like, unfortunately, it's a talk that you would have to have with your partner.
Yeah, I think those are just very hard situations that ultimately it depends on the person themselves. Like you said, their faith, their beliefs, what they want and what they desire and what they hold true. So, yeah. That's a very, I just want to bring that out there because I'm like, you say she made, she chose herself first, but who's to say that she made the right decision? Who's to say that there is a right or wrong decision in that moment?
Yeah. I didn't know if you guys would actually even be willing to touch something like this. I would be super excited, like, to do a whole segment on this.
Yeah, I think we can definitely go into other topics. Yeah. Like we touch like religion, sexuality. We kind of touched base on everything tonight, so I think it was a good dialogue.
Yeah, how you guys feel?
This was fun.
How you feeling, Kelly?
I enjoyed this.
Feeling good. Lots of stuff was said.
Kelly said it's past her bedtime. We're keeping her
I enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. No, we definitely gotta keep it
going. May I ask, how old is Kelly and how old is Daisy?
I'm 30 years old.
Oh,
Daisy.
Daisy.
I'm sorry. I'm 25.
Okay. I'm 43.
you look
Like,
like
yeah, you guys can't keep. You
Nah,
guys
I'm
gotta say your
30,
age
32.
now.
No, I'm 32. I'm 32.
Same here. I'm 32.
I'm 33.
I'm 25.
Okay.
Ryan, you 33?
Yeah.
What was your birthday?
February. When was my birthday? My birthday is February 25th, 1989.
Oh, you're
I
89.
mean,
Okay, that's why.
that's a whole nother story, y'all. I done been
Yeah.
through some stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Man.
You know,
that's a
I
side
kind of
conversation.
mentioned this to Joe the other day, but I'd love to hold another podcast where we kind of talk about not just one topic, but kind of just talk about our experiences. Maybe you never know, you might share similar experiences with another person that you never would have thought. And I think it's kind of nice to let people kind of share certain things that will give other people like another person just another perspective, another insight of just what people really go through.
Yeah,
I didn't
agree.
even know. I didn't know Crusoe you was a premature baby or close to it.
Yeah, no, they
Close
just
to it.
yeah, they just didn't.
And
they didn't
and they
believe me.
basically said the same stuff. But sorry, you can go.
I was a twin actually, supposed to be.
Wow.
Twin did not make it. I mean, it was before you can even tell what the sex
Wow.
was. And the twin didn't make it, so that was the first no. And then after that, it was like all these other things. It was like, oh yeah, this baby about to be this, and this. So yeah, let's get him out of there. And it's like,
Wow.
yeah. So
Yeah.
mom's was like, nah, we're gonna hold on. So
yeah. To Jackie's point, I definitely agree. I think it's super important, and I love her passion to want to create a space like that where people can just come in and man, they can just like actually talk and be heard. I think that's just lacking, especially in our city here. So just trying to get people comfortable with the idea of talking about things, and even in disagreement, like it's all good. Like I don't necessarily think everyone here would agree on every single thing, and that's
I
fine.
think honestly, low key it's a larger therapy session, low key.
Right. Daisy,
Yeah.
we're gonna say something.
Yeah, I was. I feel like joining this. I've never joined something like this, honestly. I was just at first I thought it was just something to support. So I was like,
Right.
okay, I'm in here, I'm supporting. I was reading a book, and then you guys started talking and about more in-depth stuff, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. I went in. But I guess I was shy at first, so I didn't really say anything. I feel like there was so much that I wanted to say, and I didn't say just because I was just nervous and I didn't want to sound dumb. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I really did. Definitely be back for the next one.
Well, we're gonna have a whole session
Great.
just Daisy just talking. We're just gonna
Right. We're gonna
right.
let her have the floor.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, so what's today? Thursdays are really good for me. Just letting you guys know. Thursdays are like super solid.
Thursday works for me too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
Thursdays
good
are
with that.
great for me.
Yeah.
We'll set something up.
Yeah, we definitely will. So, man, this was fun. I hope y'all had a good time. I know me and Jackie are gonna look at trying to co-host some stuff. So even if it's like not on a Thursday, but we have time, you might see us pop up on your timeline and stuff like that. So anyone who's interested in just chopping it up about real life stuff, you can even obviously hit me. You can hit Jackie, and I mean, I told Jackie she can hop on here and talk with people and all that type of stuff. So it's all good. But man, we'll just close this out.
Yeah, thank you guys for participating. I appreciate you guys joining. And Daisy, thanks for talking.
Thank you, y'all.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Yes, Daisy, Kelly, nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you
Daisy,
all.
Kelly, Jackie, nice to meet you all. Ryan, Joe, y'all know what's up.
You already know. Peace. I'll be in
y'all.
touch, y'all.
You guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Oops.